Brooks wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the hidden compartment he had just opened. 15 years of working in the maintenance shafts of Station Erebus, and he had never seen this space before. The metal panel had looked like part of the wall, but when his scanner detected an empty space behind it, curiosity got the better of him. Inside the compartment, wrapped in protective plastic, lay objects from another time. His hands shook as he pulled them out one by one: a data chip, some papers with writing he could barely read, and then, folded carefully at the bottom, a piece of cloth. He unfolded it slowly. Red and white stripes, a blue corner with white stars. Had seen pictures of this before, hidden images his mother had shown him when he was young. An American flag, the last one he had ever seen with his own eyes. Was 32 years old. He had been 7 when the Dominion Collective conquered Earth. His memories of that time were broken and unclear, like pieces of a dream he could not quite remember. But he remembered his mother's stories. She had told him about freedom, about dignity, about a time when humans controlled their own world. His mother had died 5 years ago in the labor camps. She had been caught speaking English to another worker. The Dominion guards had made an example of her, had watched from the crowd, forced to stand silent while they beat her. She died 3 days later from her injuries. Looked at the flag in his hands. This piece of cloth represented everything the Dominion had tried to erase. They had renamed Earth as Sector 7 Prime. They had forbidden human languages, human history, human culture. Anyone caught with Earth symbols faced immediate execution. He should destroy it. He should put it back and seal the compartment. He should forget he ever found it. Instead, carefully folded the flag and hid it under his work uniform. He took the data chip, too. That night in his small sleeping quarters, he plugged the chip into an old viewing device. Images filled the screen: Earth before the conquest, cities full of lights, oceans that sparkled blue and clean, people walking freely, laughing, living without fear. There were videos, too. A woman speaking about liberty and justice, children playing in parks, crowds gathered under flags just like the one now possessed. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, telling him these same stories. Watched the videos every night for a week. During the day, he worked his maintenance shift, fixing environmental systems and checking power conduits. Station Erebus was massive, a sprawling orbital facility that hung above what had once been Earth. Thousands of workers lived here, humans and aliens from dozens of conquered species. All of them served the Dominion. The guards were everywhere. They wore black armor and carried weapons that could burn a person to ash in seconds. They enforced the Dominion's rules without mercy. Had learned long ago to keep his head down, to speak only when spoken to never show emotion. But something was changing inside him. The flag hidden in his quarters felt like a weight on his chest. His mother's face haunted his dreams. He began to notice things he had trained himself to ignore. The way guards pushed around elderly workers, the fear in children's eyes, the empty look on people's faces as they shuffled to their work assignments. One afternoon, saw guards beating an old woman named Cole. Her crime was speaking a few words of English to comfort a crying child. They hit her with shock batons while everyone watched. No one dared to help her. No one dared to look away either because that would anger the guards. Watched fall to the ground, blood running from her mouth. She reminded him of his mother, the same gray hair, the same thin frame, the same dignity even in pain. That night pulled out the flag again. He spread it across his narrow bed and smoothed out the wrinkles. His mother had died for speaking her own language, had been beaten for showing kindness. How many others suffered and died while people like him stayed silent and afraid? He made a friend during this time. Danny Pierce was 20 years old, born after the conquest. Danny had never known freedom. He had never seen Earth's blue skies or tasted real food grown in soil. He lived his entire life in fear of the Dominion. Showed Danny the flag one night. The young man stared at it with wide eyes. "What is it?" Danny asked. "It's a flag," said, "from Earth from before." "It's beautiful," Danny whispered, "but you have to destroy it. If they find this, they'll kill you." "I know." Also befriended 2 aliens who worked in his maintenance section. Was with features like a cat and golden fur. Her people had been conquered 50 years before humans. She spoke little, but sensed anger beneath her quiet exterior. Was a massive reptilian creature with scales like armor. His species had lost their generations ago. Was gentle despite his size, and he hated the Dominion with a passion he rarely showed. showed them the flag too in the deep maintenance shafts where no cameras reached. He explained what it meant: freedom, self-determination, the right to live without fear. My people had symbols like this, said softly, touching the fabric. The Dominion burned them all. Mine too, rumbled. We are taught to forget, but I have not forgotten. Then came the announcement that changed everything. A new commander was arriving at Station Erebus. Warlord, one of the Dominion's most decorated military leaders. He was coming for a special ceremony. The ceremony would celebrate 20 years of Dominion rule over former Earth space. Every worker on the station would be required to attend. They would be forced to watch as the Dominion declared humanity's history officially ended. Earth would be nothing but Sector 7 Prime. Humans would be nothing but workers without a past. Understood what this meant. This was the final erasure. After this ceremony, Earth would truly be gone. No one would remember, no one would care. The Dominion would win completely. He looked at the flag hidden in his quarters. He thought about his mother. He thought about Cole. He thought about Danny, who had never known what it meant to be free. Made his decision. I'm going to carry it to the ceremony, he told his friends. They stared at him in shock. That's suicide, Danny said. They'll kill you the moment they see it. I know, replied calmly. Then why? Demanded. Looked at each of them. Because some things matter more than survival. Because someone has to remember. Because if we all stay silent forever, then they've already won. Put a heavy hand on shoulder. You are braver than I am human. Or more foolish, said with a sad smile. The night before the ceremony, carefully pressed the flag. He folded it the way his mother had taught him, the way the old videos showed. He practiced holding it, unfurling it, making sure he could do it smoothly when the moment came. The main assembly hall of Station Erebus could hold 10,000 people. Today it held exactly that many. Every worker on the station had been ordered to attend. Dominion guards lined the walls, their weapons ready. No one would be allowed to leave until the ceremony ended. Stood in the middle of the crowd, the flag hidden beneath his gray work uniform. His heart pounded so hard he thought everyone around him must hear it. He felt the fabric against his skin, warm from his body heat. The stage at the front of the hall displayed the Dominion's symbol, a black circle with 3 interlocking claws. Large screens showed images of Dominion might, warships, armies, conquered worlds bowing before their masters. Warlord walked onto the stage. He was tall and broad, his armor polished to a mirror shine. His face was cruel, with eyes that had watched thousands die without feeling anything. The crowd fell silent as he approached the podium. Today marks 20 years since this sector was brought under proper rule, began. His voice boomed through speakers. 20 years since the humans of this pathetic world learned their place in the order of things. His hands clenched into fists. Around him, other humans stood with their heads down. Some were crying silently. Others showed no emotion at all, their faces blank from years of accepting defeat. The species that once called itself masters of Earth no longer exists, continued. They are now simply workers, servants. They have no history worth remembering, no culture worth preserving, no future except what we allow them. The screens changed to show images of Earth during the conquest. Cities burning, humans fleeing, the final surrender. Saw several people in the crowd flinch at these images. Today we officially declare their past erased, said. This world is Sector 7 Prime. It has always been Sector 7 Prime. There was never an Earth. There were never free humans. This is the truth we establish today. Something inside snapped, not with anger but with clarity. This was the moment. If he waited any longer, if he let fear control him one more second, his mother's memory meant nothing. Cole's suffering meant nothing. Every human who had died rather than submit meant nothing. He pushed through the crowd toward a service platform at the side of the hall. People moved aside, confused. A guard noticed him but did not react yet, thinking he was just trying to see better. Climbed onto the platform. It raised him 10 feet above the crowd. Now everyone could see him. Now there was no turning back. He pulled the flag from beneath his uniform. He unfolded it with shaking hands. Red, white, and blue fabric caught the harsh lights of the assembly hall. He held it high above his head, gripping the pole with both hands. The hall fell into complete silence. Thousands of eyes turned toward him. On the stage, Warlord froze mid-sentence, staring in disbelief. Found his voice. His mother had taught him these words in English when he was young. He had practiced them from the videos. Now he spoke them clearly, loudly, so everyone could hear. "This is the flag of Earth," shouted. "This is the flag of humanity. We are not erased. We are not forgotten. We are not servants. We are human beings, and we are still here." He could see faces in the crowd now. Shock, fear, but also something else, something that looked like hope. "My name is Brooks," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "My mother died in your camps for speaking her own language, but I stand here today speaking it freely. You can kill me. You cannot kill what this flag represents. You cannot kill the idea of freedom. You cannot kill dignity." For 30 seconds, the flag flew in that hall. 30 seconds where the Dominion's absolute power was challenged. 30 seconds where one man reminded thousands that they were more than what their oppressors claimed. Then the guards moved. They rushed toward the platform, weapons raised. Their faces showed rage and panic. No one had ever the Dominion so openly. But before they reached, something happened. Danny Pierce stepped out from the crowd. The young man who had never known freedom raised his fist and shouted, "For Earth, for humanity." Cole, the old woman who had been beaten just days before, stood on trembling legs. Her voice was weak but clear. "We remember," she said. "We all remember." More humans began to stand. They did not shout. Many of them were crying. But they stood, and that was enough. They stood and acknowledged what was saying. They stood and proved that Warlord was wrong. The guards reached. They grabbed him and pulled him down from the platform. He held onto the flag as long as he could, but they tore it from his hands. They hit him with their weapons. Pain exploded through his body. He fell to the ground, blood in his mouth. They dragged him toward the exit, beating him as they went. His vision blurred. He could hear shouting orders. He could hear people crying. He could hear guards arresting others who had stood. Through the pain, felt something he had not felt in years: peace. He had done what he promised. He had honored his mother's memory. For 30 seconds, Earth had existed again. What did not see was in the crowd. The woman had a small device in her hand, hidden beneath her sleeve. It was a maintenance scanner modified to record video. She had captured everything. Climbing the platform, the flag unfurling, his words, the response from the crowd, all of it. As guards dragged away and ordered the hall cleared, slipped into a maintenance corridor. She ran through the familiar passages until she reached a communication junction. Was already there, waiting. "Did you get it?" they asked. "Every second," replied. Her hands worked quickly, connecting her device to the junction systems. "They will trace this," warned. "I know, but it will be too late." Uploaded the recording to every hidden communication channel she knew. The underground networks that connected workers across the station. The secret frequencies that resistance groups used. The coded transmissions that moved between systems. Within an hour, the recording began spreading. By the end of the day, it had reached 3 sectors. Workers in other stations watched hold the flag. They heard his words about freedom and dignity. They saw humans standing in defiance. The recording carried something powerful. Not just information, but emotion. Not just defiance, but hope. People who had given up on resistance watched it and remembered what they had lost. People who had never been free watched it and wondered what freedom might feel like. Knew none of this. He was in the detention level of the station, beaten and broken. The guards had not been gentle. His ribs were cracked. His face was swollen. Blood dripped from cuts across his arms and legs. Other human prisoners were brought to the cells near him. People who had stood during his speech. People who had been caught with copies of the video. They looked at with something like worship. An old man in the next cell spoke through the bars. "I saw Earth once before they came. I had forgotten how beautiful it was. Thank you for reminding me." A young woman across the corridor whispered, "My daughter will know your name. I will make sure of it." Tried to speak, but his jaw was too damaged. He could only nod. 3 days later, Warlord came to the detention level personally. He stood outside cell, staring at the broken human inside. "Do you know what you have done?" demanded. "Do you understand the chaos you have caused?" Looked up at him with one good eye. He managed to speak through his damaged mouth. "I showed them we are not yours." "You are all mine," snarled. "And in 3 days you will die, publicly, painfully, and everyone will learn what happens to those who defy the Dominion." Smiled despite the pain. "Kill me if you want, but you cannot kill what I started." The flag flew, people saw it, they remembered. Struck the bars with his armored fist, making them ring. "Your flag means nothing. Your species means nothing. In 3 days, you will be an example of what happens to rebels." The recording traveled through the galaxy like a spark jumping between dry branches. Within 2 days, it reached human labor camps on 15 worlds. Within 4 days, it had spread to 40 systems. By the end of the first week, millions had watched Brooks hold the flag and speak about freedom. On the mining planet, 300 human workers gathered in a deep tunnel after their shift ended. They huddled around a small screen, watching the recording for the 5th time. Many of them were crying. A miner named Jacob Stone stood up when the video ended. He was a big man with hands from years of drilling. "We have to do something," he said. "Like what?" another miner asked. "Get ourselves killed like him." "He is not dead yet," Jacob replied. "And even if they kill him, he showed us something. He showed us we are still human, we still matter." That night, Jacob and 20 others began making flags. They used scraps of red and white fabric stolen from supply shipments. They painted blue sections with maintenance dye. They sewed them in secret, hiding them under their bunks. The flags were crude and rough, not like the one it held, but they were symbols, and symbols had power. Across the galaxy on a teaching world, a woman named showed the recording to her students. They had been conquered 50 years ago. Their own language was forbidden. Their history was being slowly erased, just like humanity's. "This human did something we have been too afraid to do," told her students. "He stood alone and reminded everyone who he was. We were once proud. We once had our own flags, our own symbols. What happened to that pride?" A young student raised her hand. "Teacher, they killed anyone who kept our symbols. My grandmother died for singing an old song." "I know," said gently. "But look at this human. He knew he would die. He did it anyway, because he understood that some things are worth dying for. Your grandmother understood that too." The students watched the recording again. They saw his face determined despite his fear. They saw the flag catching the light. They heard his words about dignity and freedom. That week, forbidden songs began to spread through the teaching centers. Students sang them quietly at first, then louder. When guards tried to stop them, more students joined in. The songs their grandparents had sung, the melodies that carried their history, began to fill the air again. On an engineering station, a massive reptilian named watched the recording alone in his quarters. His people had lost their 3 generations ago. Most had accepted their fate, believing resistance was pointless against Dominion might. But watching hold that flag felt something stir inside him. Anger, not the hot rage of the moment, but the cold determination to change things. Was an engineer. He understood systems. He understood how power grids worked, how communication networks functioned, how security systems could be bypassed. He had this knowledge but had never considered using it against the Dominion. Now he did. Began contacting other engineers on different stations. He sent them the recording along with coded messages. "If one human can stand alone," he wrote, "imagine what we could do together." Small acts of sabotage began across facilities. Equipment malfunctioned at key moments. Power systems had mysterious failures, nothing catastrophic but enough to cause problems, enough to show the Dominion was not invincible. The Dominion's security forces noticed the increased activity. Emergency meetings were held at high levels of command. They tried to track the spread of the recording, but it was impossible. Too many people had it. Too many networks were sharing it. On planet, a human smuggler named Cross watched the recording on his ship. Ran weapons and supplies for various resistance groups, but they were all small and disconnected. They fought the Dominion in tiny ways, never coordinating, never trusting each other enough to unite. Saw an opportunity. Sact had touched something universal, not just humans but all the conquered species. Here was something they could rally around. He began sending messages to resistance leaders across 6 sectors. "Have you seen the human with the flag? This is our moment. This is when we stop hiding and start fighting together." The responses came slowly at first. Resistance leaders were cautious, afraid of Dominion spies, but the recording itself was proof that change was possible. If one maintenance worker could defy Warlord in front of thousands, maybe they could do more. An elderly woman emerged from hiding on. Colonel Victoria Grant had been a military officer on Earth before the conquest. She had spent 15 years living under a false identity, working as a cargo inspector. She had given up on fighting, convinced that humanity's time was over. Then she saw hold the flag. Victoria wept watching it. She had served under that flag. She had sworn oaths to protect what it represented. She had broken those oaths by hiding for 15 years while her people suffered. She contacted Cross. "I want to help," she said simply. "Who are you?" asked. "Someone who forgot why we fight," Victoria replied. "Someone who is remembering." Victoria brought military knowledge that the resistance cells lacked. She understood strategy, logistics, and how to coordinate large groups. She began teaching others, planning operations that went beyond simple sabotage. Meanwhile, sat in his cell on Station Erebus, unaware of any of this. His body was healing slowly. The guards had stopped beating him, saving their strength for the execution. He was given basic medical treatment to keep him alive for the public display. A sympathetic maintenance worker brought news from outside. The worker, a young human named Chris, had access to restricted areas. He told about the recording spreading, about the small rebellions starting on other worlds. "You started something," Chris whispered through the cell bars. "People are standing up, not just humans, even some species I have never heard of. They all saw what you did." His damaged face managed a small smile. "I just carried a flag." "You did more than that," Chris said. "You reminded us that we matter." Asked Chris to record another message. Using a hidden device, Chris captured speaking from his cell. His face was still bruised and swollen, but his voice was steady. "My name is Brooks," he began. "In 3 days, the Dominion will execute me. They will make it public. They will try to use my death to scare you back into submission." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Do not let them. What I did was not special. I am not a hero. I am just someone who got tired of being afraid. Any of you could do what I did. Any of you can stand up and say no." Look directly into the camera. "This is not just about humans. This is about every species the Dominion has conquered, every culture they have tried to erase, every person they have told does not matter. We all matter, and together we are stronger than they are." He touched the bars of his cell. "They are going to kill me, but I am not afraid anymore, because I know that what I started will not die with me. You will carry it forward, all of you together." The message ended. Chris smuggled it out of the detention level. By the next day, it was spreading just like the first recording. Words from his cell reached millions more people. Warlord learned about the second message and flew into a rage. He ordered increased security across the entire station. He brought in additional warships to orbit above Station Erebus. The execution would proceed as planned, but now it would be a massive show of force. "Let them see what happens to rebels," told his commanders. "Let them watch this human die, and let them understand that resistance is futile." But something was happening that did not understand. Fear only worked when people had something to lose. Had shown that sometimes, losing everything was worth it if you could stand up for what mattered. In the 3 days before the execution, small acts of defiance across Dominion space. Workers slowed their production. Equipment broke more often. Forbidden symbols appeared on walls. People whispered name like a prayer. On the miners finished making their flags. On the teaching world, students prepared for a mass protest. On the stations, engineers finalized their sabotage plans. On Cross and Victoria Grant coordinated with dozens of resistance cells. None of these groups knew about the others. They were not working together yet, but they were all moving in the same direction, all inspired by the same source. One maintenance worker with a flag had become a symbol for millions. One man's willingness to die for dignity had awakened something in conquered peoples across the galaxy. The Dominion had spent decades teaching submission and fear. Brooks had reminded everyone what courage looked like. In his cell, slept fitfully, he dreamed of his mother. He dreamed of Earth before the conquest, a place he barely remembered. He dreamed of the flag flying in the assembly hall, bright and defiant. He did not know that in 3 days his execution would be interrupted. He did not know that Cross was bringing ships. He did not know that Victoria Grant was planning an assault. He did not know that across the galaxy, people were preparing to fight. Station Erebus was locked down than it had ever been. Every corridor had guards. Every entrance was sealed. Above the station, 12 Dominion warships floated in perfect formation, their weapons trained on the facility below. Warlord was taking no chances. This execution would proceed without incident. The human rebel would die, and everyone watching would learn what defiance cost. Was dragged from his cell at dawn. His hands were bound behind his back. His legs barely held his weight after days without movement. Guards hauled him through the corridors, displaying him to workers who were forced to watch. Some turned away. Others stared with tears in their eyes. They brought him to the central plaza, an open area in the heart of the station where thousands could gather. A platform had been erected in the middle. On this platform stood an execution device, cold and efficient. Would be placed inside it, and it would end his life slowly enough for everyone to watch him suffer. The plaza filled with people. Every worker on the station had been ordered to attend. Guards surrounded the crowd, weapons ready. Above, screens showed his face as he prepared to address the assembly. Was forced to his knees on the platform. His body ached, his vision blurred from the damage he had taken. But his mind was clear. He looked out at the crowd and saw faces he recognized, and stood near the front, their expressions grim. Cole was there, leaning on another worker for support. Young Chris stood with tears running down his face. Warlord's voice boomed through the speakers. Today, you witnessed the price of rebellion. This human thought he could defy the Dominion. He thought a piece of cloth mattered more than his life. He was wrong. Closed his eyes. He thought about his mother. He thought about Earth. He thought about the flag flying in his hands. Then everything changed. Alarms screamed throughout the station. The lights flickered. On the screens, image was replaced by static, then by something else. A ship emerging from hyperspace, then another, then dozens more. Cross had brought every ship he could gather. Smuggler vessels, old cargo haulers, converted mining craft. They were not military ships, but there were enough of them to cause chaos. They appeared around Station Erebus and immediately engaged the Dominion warships. At the same moment, explosions rocked the station. Carefully placed charges detonated in power junctions throughout the facility. The lights went out completely. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red light. In the darkness and confusion, people moved. Resistance fighters who had been hiding among the workers pulled out weapons and led a team toward the platform where waited. Other teams attacked guard positions across the plaza. The battle was immediate and brutal. Dominion guards had superior weapons and training, but they were scattered by the explosions. The resistance fighters knew the station's layout and used every advantage they could find. On the platforms, guards moved to protect their prisoner. They did not see coming until the massive crashed into them like a living boulder. His strength sent them flying. Cuts bonds with a blade, pulling him to his feet. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I will try," gasped. They ran from the platform as more guards arrived. Stayed behind, his huge body blocking the way. He fought with his bare hands, buying time for others to escape. Throughout the galaxy, this moment was repeated on other worlds. The attack on Station Erebus was coordinated with uprisings across 6 systems. The miners rose up with their crude flags flying. They seized the mining equipment and turned it into weapons. They took control of the facilities and broadcast messages of freedom. On the teaching world, thousands of students marched through the streets. They sang forbidden songs. They carried symbols of their lost culture. When guards tried to stop them, they did not fight back. They simply kept singing, kept marching, and more people joined them with every step. On the engineering stations, and his colleagues activated their sabotage. Power systems failed across multiple facilities. Communication networks went dark. Dominion forces found themselves blind and disconnected, unable to coordinate their response. Victoria Grant led an assault on a Dominion armory. Her team moved with military precision, using tactics that caught the guards by surprise. They captured enough weapons to arm 500 fighters. Victoria's voice came over underground networks, calling for others to join the fight. Back on Station Erebus, the battle raged through the corridors. Moved with his team despite his injuries. They fought their way toward the station's communication center. If they could control that, they could broadcast to the entire sector. The Dominion fought back hard. Warlord personally led a counterattack, bringing his elite guards. These warriors were veterans of 100 battles. They moved through the station, killing rebels without mercy. His group was pinned down in a maintenance junction. Dominion fire tore through the air around them. A young fighter next to was hit and fell without a sound. Another was wounded, crying out in pain. Then help arrived from an unexpected source. A Dominion shuttle had broken through the chaos outside and docked with the station. From it emerged Colonel Victoria Grant and 50 fighters armed with stolen weapons. Victoria moved like the soldier she had been trained to be. Her orders were clear and sharp. Her team provided covering fire, allowing group to advance. The two groups merged and pushed forward together. "Brooks," Victoria asked as they ran. "Yes," gasped. "I served under that flag you carried," Victoria said. "It is an honor." They reached the communication center. The door was sealed and heavily guarded. The fight there was fierce. Guards held the entrance while rebels threw everything they had against it. People died on both sides. Blood pooled on the floor. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Arrived, wounded but still fighting. With his massive strength, he tore through the door's frame. The team poured inside, stumbled in behind them, holding a weapon he barely knew how to use. Inside the communication center, technicians worked at their stations. Some raised their hands in surrender. Others tried to defend their equipment. The fight was brief and brutal. When the center was secured, Victoria immediately began working the systems. She understood military communications and knew how to override security protocols. Within minutes, she had control of the station's main broadcast array. "We can transmit to the entire sector," she said. "What do you want to say?" Looked at the camera that Victoria pointed at him. His face was a mess of bruises. His uniform was torn and bloody. He looked like someone who should be dead but somehow was not. "Turn it on," he said. The broadcast went live. Across Station Erebus, across orbiting ships, across planets throughout the sector, people saw Brooks standing in the captured communication center. Behind him, the flag from his first defiance had been recovered and now hung on the wall. "My name is Brooks," he began. His voice was rough but steady. "You were supposed to watch me die today. Instead, you are watching me fight. You are watching all of us fight." He gestured to the people around him. "Humans and others. We are different species, but we share one thing. We are all tired of living in fear. We are all tired of being told we do not matter." Moved closer to the camera. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. "The Dominion wanted my death to be a lesson. Let this be a different lesson. One person with courage can inspire others. Many people with courage can change everything." Outside the communication center, fighting continued. Warlord was gathering forces for a final assault, but for this moment had the galaxy's attention. "We are taking this station," said. "We are declaring it free, not just for humans, but for everyone who has been conquered, everyone who has been told to forget who they are, everyone who wants to live without fear." He paused, catching his breath. "They will try to take it back. They will send more forces. Some of us will die, but we will not surrender. We will not go back to being silent. This is where we stand." Raised the flag behind him. "This is Earth's flag, but it is more than that now. It is a symbol for all of us, for freedom, for dignity, for the right to exist on our own terms." The broadcast ended. Victoria shut down the system before the Dominion could trace it fully. But the message was out. Millions had seen standing in that captured center, defiant and alive. The battle for Station Erebus continued for 18 more hours. Warlord threw everything he had at the rebels. The fighting was desperate and bloody. Entire sections of the station were destroyed. Hundreds died on both sides. Danny Pierce died saving from a Dominion assassin. The young man who had never known freedom gave his life to protect the symbol of it, held him as he died, whispering thanks through his tears. But slowly, the tide turned. More Dominion soldiers defected, unable to fight against people seeking what they themselves had lost. Workers throughout the station joined the rebellion. The sheer number of people fighting back overwhelmed even the Dominion's superior weapons. Warlord made a final stand in the command center. He fought with savage determination, killing 3 rebels before Victoria Grant put him down with a clean shot. The great Warlord died on the floor of his own station, defeated by the people he had thought beneath him. When the battle finally ended, Station Erebus was secured. The cost had been terrible. Bodies lay in the corridors. Entire sections were without air or power, but the station was free. Climbed to the highest point of the command center. His hands shook as he raised the flag once more. This time it was not a moment of defiance. It was a declaration of victory. The flag flew above Station Erebus. Next to it, others raised flags of their own species. Symbols, banners, standards from a dozen conquered peoples, they flew together, proud and free. The image was broadcast across the galaxy. The Dominion's first lost territory. The beginning of something they had never faced before. Not scattered resistance, but united rebellion. looked out at the stars through the command center windows. Earth hung below, but still beautiful. For the first time in 15 years, it belonged to humans again. The loss of Station Erebus sent shock waves through the Dominion Collective. For the first time in their history of conquest, they had lost territory, not to another empire, but to their own slaves. Emergency councils were called. The three species that ruled the Dominion argued about how to respond. Some wanted immediate, overwhelming force. Others urged caution, fearing that harsh retaliation would inspire more rebellions. While they argued, the rebellion spread. The victory at Station Erebus proved that the Dominion could be beaten. That proof was worth more than any speech or symbol. Within a month, 12 more systems rose in open revolt. Within 3 months, over 40 worlds were fighting for freedom. The Dominion military found itself stretched impossibly thin, trying to contain fires burning across the galaxy. Station Erebus became the headquarters of what they called the Free Coalition. Representatives from dozens of conquered species arrived to coordinate their efforts. The station's meeting rooms, once used for Dominion administration, now hosted discussions about freedom and self-determination. Brooks sat in one of those meetings, still adjusting to his new reality. He had wanted to honor his mother's memory. He had not wanted to lead a rebellion, but people looked to him as a symbol, and he could not refuse that responsibility. Colonel Victoria Grant handled military strategy. She organized the scattered resistance cells into something resembling an army. She taught them tactics, helped them coordinate attacks, and planned campaigns across multiple systems. Cross managed logistics and supply lines. His smuggling networks became lifelines for rebel forces. Weapons, food, medicine, and information flowed through channels he controlled. Together with representatives from other species, they created a declaration of principles. It spoke of freedom, dignity, and the right of all beings to determine their own fate. They created a new flag that combined elements from Earth and other freed worlds. But the American flag had carried was preserved in a place of honor, a reminder of where it all began. Struggled with his role. The man who had carried the flag was supposed to be a simple maintenance worker. Now he gave speeches, made decisions that affected millions, and represented humanity to the galaxy. He had nightmares about Danny Pierce dying in his arms. He thought constantly about all the people who had died because of his actions. The weight of it pressed on him every day. A counselor named helped him process the trauma. She had been the teacher who showed recording to her students. Now she worked with survivors, helping them cope with what they had experienced. "You carry guilt for the deaths," told one day. "But you did not kill those people. The Dominion killed them. Your crime was reminding them they deserved freedom." "Danny would still be alive if I had stayed quiet," said. "Danny would still be a slave," replied gently. "He chose to stand with you. He chose freedom over safety. That was his choice, not yours." Formed close bonds with the other survivors from Station Erebus. Became like a sister to him. Despite his wounds, served as his personal guard. Cole, the old woman who had been beaten for speaking English, became an advisor. Her wisdom and experience guided many decisions. But the war itself was brutal and grinding. The Free Coalition won victories, but they also suffered terrible defeats. The Dominion adapted quickly, developing new tactics to counter the rebellion. A colony on planet Harper refused to surrender when Dominion forces arrived. The Dominion destroyed it from orbit. 30,000 people died in minutes. The massacre was broadcast as a warning to other rebels. Watched the footage and wept. He wanted to give up to stop the killing, but Victoria Grant stopped him. "If we stop now, they die for nothing," she said. "If we stop now, the Dominion wins, and this will happen again and again. We have to see this through." The war continued for 3 years. Battles raged across dozens of systems. Millions died on both sides. The galaxy bled while two visions of the future fought for dominance. Participated in several major battles. He was not a soldier, but he learned to fight when necessary. More importantly, he learned to inspire. His presence on the battlefield gave people courage. His speeches before attacks reminded fighters why they struggled. He survived 2 assassination attempts. The Dominion wanted him dead more than anyone else. They offered huge rewards for his capture, but guards were loyal and luck seemed to favor him. Through it all, the original flag remained on display at Station Erebus. People came from across the coalition to see it. They touched the fabric with reverence. They told their children about the man who carried it into a ceremony and changed everything. The turning point came in the 4th year of the war. Intelligence revealed that the Dominion's 3 ruling species were negotiating separately with the Coalition. The alliance that had conquered the galaxy together was fracturing under the pressure of sustained rebellion. One species, called the Vex, sent secret envoys to Station Erebus. They were tired of the war. Their casualties were mounting. Their economy was suffering. They wanted peace. The Vex offered to withdraw from the Dominion and grant independence to all territories they controlled. In exchange, they wanted amnesty for their leaders and protection from retaliation. The Coalition debated this offer for weeks. Many wanted justice, not mercy. They wanted Vex leaders punished for decades of oppression. They wanted revenge for everything that had been taken from them. Argued for accepting the offer. He spoke before the Coalition Assembly, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We are fighting for freedom, not revenge," he said. "If we can end this war and save millions of lives, is that not worth swallowing our anger? The Vex have done terrible things, but killing their leaders will not undo that. It will only create more death." Victoria Grant supported him. From a military perspective, losing 1/3 of the Dominion's forces changes everything. We can win if the Vex withdraw. Without that, this war could last another decade. The debate was fierce. Some species refused to forgive, but eventually pragmatism won. The Coalition voted to accept the Vex offer. The withdrawal of the Vex broke the Dominion. The other 2 ruling species could not maintain control alone. Within 6 months, they too were negotiating for peace. The terms were harsh but fair. All conquered territories would be released. War criminals would face tribunals. Reparations would be paid. Democratic reforms would be implemented. It was not the complete victory many had wanted. Some Dominion leaders escaped justice. Some crimes went unpunished, but the killing stopped. The war ended. 5 years after carried the flag, he returned to Earth. He had not set foot on it since childhood. The planet was from the conquest and years of exploitation, but it was recovering. Humans and allied species worked together to rebuild. Forests were replanted. Oceans were cleaned. Cities rose from ruins. Earth was becoming itself again. Traveled to the place where his mother had died. It was a labor camp in what had once been called Montana. The camp had been destroyed during the liberation, but the site remained. He planted the original flag there in soil his mother's blood had touched. Around it, he built a memorial, not just for his mother, but for all who had died under Dominion rule. The names of the dead were carved into stone walls, thousands upon thousands of names. People asked to take a leadership position in the new Earth government. He refused. He had never wanted power. He had only wanted freedom. Instead, dedicated himself to reconciliation work. He traveled to former Dominion worlds, speaking about the costs of tyranny and the value of freedom. He met with former enemies, encouraging forgiveness without forgetting. He maintained his friendships with and others. They gathered regularly, sharing meals and memories. They mourned those they had lost. They celebrated what they had won. Also worked with young people. He spoke at schools and universities across many worlds. He showed them the flag and told them the story. But he always emphasized one point. "I am not special," he told them. "I am not a hero. I was just someone who got tired of being afraid. Any of you could do what I did. Any of you can stand up for what is right." Students from many species listened to his words. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. They learned that one person could make a difference if they were willing to try. The flag itself became a symbol recognized across the galaxy. It represented not just American or human ideals, but universal principles. Freedom, dignity, the right to exist on your own terms. New flags flew on freed worlds. Each species reclaimed their own symbols and history, but many of them incorporated elements from flag into their designs. Red stripes for courage, white for peace, blue for hope, stars for unity. 10 years after carrying the flag, was invited to speak at a ceremony on Station Erebus. A monument was being unveiled, commemorating the rebellion's beginning. Thousands gathered to hear him. Stood before them, now in his early 40s. His body bore scars from the battles. His face showed the weight of everything he had experienced, but his eyes were clear. 10 years ago, I stood in the assembly hall below us, began. I held a flag and spoke about freedom. I thought I would die that day. I thought my life would end and maybe that would be enough." He paused, looking at the crowd. "But I did not die, and what happened next was not because of me. It was because of all of you, every person who watched that recording and found courage, every species that decided they would not submit anymore, every fighter who stood against impossible odds." Gestured to the monument behind him. It showed a figure holding a flag, but the face was left blank. "This monument does not show my face because this story is not about me. It is about everyone who chose freedom, everyone who paid the price for it, everyone who believed that dignity matters more than safety." The crowd was silent, listening to every word. "We won our freedom," continued. "But freedom is not something you win once and keep forever. Every generation has to choose it again. Every person has to decide whether they will stand or kneel. My mother chose to stand and it killed her. I chose to stand and it changed my life. You must make your own choice." He touched the monument, his hand resting on the blank face. "Remember the cost. Remember those who died. Remember why we fought. And teach your children that freedom is always worth defending." Stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted in applause, but he barely heard it. He was thinking about his mother, about Danny Pierce, about all the faces he could never forget. Later, as the ceremony ended and people dispersed, stood alone looking at the monument. Victoria Grant joined him, older now but still carrying herself like a soldier. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. Considered the question. "Every day," he said honestly. "I think about everyone who died. I think about the choices I made and the consequences they had. I carry that weight." "But would you change it?" Looked at the monument again, at the blank face holding the flag. "No," he said finally, "because the alternative was worse. The alternative was submission, erasure, slow death of the spirit. Whatever price we paid, it was worth paying." Victoria nodded. "That is why people follow you, not because you are perfect, but because you understand the cost and chose to pay it anyway." They stood together in silence, two old warriors remembering a battle that changed the galaxy. Thought about the flag, now preserved in a museum. He thought about 30 seconds in an assembly hall that sparked a rebellion. He thought about his mother's last words telling him not to forget who he was. He had not forgotten, and because he remembered, millions of others were free. The stars above Station Erebus shone bright and clear, looking down on worlds that determined their own fate. The fire had sparked still burned, carried forward by those who understood that some things were worth fighting for. One man, one flag, one moment of courage. It had been enough to light the galaxy. The war was just beginning, but the first battle had been won. He only knew that he had kept his promise. He had honored his mother's memory. He had reminded people that Earth existed, that humanity mattered, that freedom was worth the cost. Whether he lived or died no longer mattered as much as what he had already done. The flag had flown, the recording had spread, the spark had been lit. Now it was up to others to turn that spark into a fire. As walked away, closed his eye, he thought about the flag, he thought about his mother, he thought about the 30 seconds when Earth existed again. He did not know that his 30 seconds were becoming something larger. He did not know that across the galaxy, people were watching his recording and finding courage they did not know they had. He did not know that his death would not be an ending, but a beginning. Danny came to his quarters and begged him not to do this. Brought him extra food, knowing it might be his last meal. Simply sat with him in silence, sharing the weight of what was coming. Slept little that night. He thought about his mother's last words to him, whispered as she lay dying from her beating. "Don't let them make you forget who you are." He wouldn't forget, and for one moment neither would anyone else. The flag lay folded beside him, waiting for morning.